Good morning, class 11th. Class 11th, from today onwards, we shall start with our literature. As you know, in your literature, you have two textbooks, Hornbill and Snapshots. Dear students, we shall continue with Hornbill. And the very first chapter in Hornbill is The Portrait of a Lady by Khushwant Singh. Dear students, this chapter is all about the relationship between a grandmother and a grandson. Why the title is given The Portrait of a Lady? This title is used here by Khushwant Singh for his grandmother. And the chapter describes the life of Khushwant Singh when he was in village with his grandmother, and after that when they shifted to the city. There are two main characters in the chapter. The narrator himself, Khushwant Singh, and his grandmother. In the very beginning, as I am telling you, that the narrator used to live with his grandmother in the village. Later on, they were shifted in city where his parents were living. So till the time when they were living in village, there was no problem. Everything was perfect. Everything was going on smoothly. Grandmother used to take care of her grandson Khushwant Singh, and both of them, they were happy. They used to go to village school. But a drastic change came in the life of narrator as well as his grandmother when they were shifted to the city. These things we shall discuss in the chapter during the reading. I would say it is a loving tribute from a grandson to his grandmother, where he reminisces about the emotional bond he shared with her. So dear students, now we are going to start this chapter. So first of all, note down the meaning of these expressions which are given in the beginning. First is, the thought was almost revolting, which is extremely unpleasant, disgusting. Note down, students. Remember, you will write down the vocab in your fair notebook also. So when you are listening to this video, you must take a notebook and pen and note down the meaning of these expressions. The thought was almost revolting means disgusting or extremely unpleasant. Next, an expanse of pure white serenity. Expanse, which is very wide. Serenity, a symbol of peace. This is specially used for the grandmother because she used to be in white sari. Next is a turning point where life changes. Next is accepted her secularism with resignation. Accepted her seclusion with resignation. Seclusion means the state of being private, or you can say privacy, or having little contact with others. Resignation, when you give up everything. Next is a veritable bedlam of chirpings. Veritable, which is real one. Bedlam, which is full of noise. And chirpings, the sound created by the birds. Next is frivolous rebukes. Frivolous rebukes means to scold in an amusing way. Means you are scolding someone, but your purpose is not that. You are enjoying when you are scolding someone, but the purpose is not to scold that particular person, right? Next, the sagging skins of the dilapidated drum. Sagging, which is no longer firm. Which is no longer firm. F-I-R-M. Firm means hard. Dilapidated, which is very old. Which is very old, or you can say in bad condition. I hope students you have written down the meaning of these expressions. Now let's start the chapter. My grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her. The narrator says, my grandmother, like everybody's grandmother. Means, when we are talking about the word grandmother, definitely we remember our grandparents. And we know, grandmother means the mother who is very old in age. That is to be considered, right? So the narrator says, my grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. Means she was also old. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her. It's saying that he is well known to her for last 20 years, and till the time there is no change in her. Means he's saying she had been old and wrinkled. Wrinkled, when you have crisscross over your faces, for the 20 years that I had known her. Means there is no change in last 20 years. Grandmother is almost same as she was 20 years earlier and now in present, without any change. Her face full of wrinkles, and she was almost old. People said that she had once been young and pretty, and had even had a husband. But that was hard to believe. People said that she had once been young and pretty. Why is saying that it was hard to believe? Because last 20 years there was no change in grandmother. She was old. Her face, it was full of wrinkles. Okay. So that's why it was hard for the author to believe that once she had been young and pretty, and even had a husband. My grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. Now he is talking about his grandfather, whose portrait was there in the room. His long white beard covered the best part of his chest, and he looked at least 100 years old. So when he looked at his grandfather's portrait, he is having long beard which covered the best part of his chest. It seems that the age of his grandfather when he died, it was almost 100. He did not look the sort of person who would have a wife or children. And the narrator thinks that when he looks at his grandfather's portrait, that is his own idea, that his grandfather seems like such a person. Usually we find such person where? Like when we find the person like saint, okay, those who are sitting somewhere and just remembering the God. So that's why he says that when he looks at his grandfather's portrait, he does not think that he was that sort of person who would have a wife or children. And moreover, the grandfather in that portrait, he was wearing what? A big turban and loose fitting clothes. So we find usually the saints, they used to wear such sort of clothes. That's why he says he looked as if he could only have lots and lots of children. He looked as if he could only have lots and lots of grandchildren. As for my grandmother, being young and pretty, the thought was almost revolting. And if we say that my grandmother, she had been once young and pretty, it is totally disgusting, hard to believe. She often told us the games she used to play as a child. We all know that when we sit with our grandparents, they used to discuss about their past. When they were young, what sort of games they used to play, they used to discuss. But don't you think, my dear children, nowadays, hardly the young children, they spend time with their grandparents. And that's why I would say that the young generation is lacking in moral values. So dear students, if it is possible, every day spend some time with your grandparents as well as with your parents. It is necessary. It is quite necessary, my dear students. So she often told us of the games she used to play as a child that seemed quite absurd and undignified on her part, and we treated it like the fables of the prophets she used to tell us. Fables means the moral lessons. Fables means the moral lesson. She often told us about what? Underline this line. She often told us of the games she used to play as a child. That seemed quite absurd. Absurd means ridiculous. Absurd means ridiculous. Or you can say unreasonable and undignified. And undignified. Undignified means silly, and to lose the respect of other people on her part, and we treated it, though it was hard to believe, as he had mentioned already. So it's saying that when she used to tell us about all these, we just treated it like the fables of the prophets, like just like a saint is telling us moral stories and we are getting it. That's it, nothing else. She had always been short and fat and slightly bent. Underline the line, students. These are the features, key features of grandmothers. She had always been short and fat and slightly bent. Her face was a crisscross of wrinkles running from everywhere to everywhere. So if you are to write the character sketch of grandmother, you can add these things, you can add these vocab. No, we were certain she had always been as we had. No, we were certain she had always been as we had known her. Means, still he is talking about that we cannot believe that once she had been young and pretty, because from that time period when the author was a young child, he is observing his grandmother and is saying that there is no change in her. So old, so terribly old, that she could not have grown older and had stayed at the same age for 20 years. He is describing that his grandmother was old, not only old, so terribly old that she could not have grown older, and that's why she had stayed at the same age for 20 years. Means it was the extreme of old age. She cannot be more older than that. She could never have been pretty. It's saying she could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful. Dear students, there are two things now: pretty and beautiful. Most of us, we get confused in these two words and we take both the words for physical appearance, pretty as well as beautiful. Pretty by physical appearance and beautiful by thoughts, by soul, by thinking, by actions. So grandmother was not pretty, but she was beautiful. She hobbled about the house. Hobbled means to walk with difficulty. Hobbled means to walk with difficulty. She hobbled about the house in spotless white, with one hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop, and the other telling the beads of her rosary. Spotless white means perfectly white, perfectly neat and clean. And as it is mentioned that she was little bit bent, fat, bent, that's why when she used to walk here and there in the house, see the situation of grandmother, that one hand resting on her waist, one hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop. It means she was little bit bent, one hand was on waist, and with the other hand she used to tell what? With the other hand telling the beads of her rosary. Like in the old days, the people, they chant mantras or they remember God. So she used to carry a rosary in one hand and she used to tell the beads of her that rosary one by one. Usually we sit at home and we pray to God, we take a rosary in our hand and then we tell the beads of that rosary by chanting Gayatri Mantra or Om Namah Shivaya, something like that. Her silver locks were scattered untidily over her pale. Her silver locks refer to her hair. Means her hair, they were of silver color. Or you can say they were of silver in color. Her silver locks were scattered untidily over her pale, and they were scattered over her face. Pale, yellowish in color. Puckered face. Puckered means wrinkled face. And her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayer. And every time the author finds her that she is speaking something, and whenever she is speaking something, it means she was lost in prayer. Yes, she was beautiful. She was like the winter landscape in the mountains. She was like the winter landscape in the mountains, an expanse of pure white serenity, breathing peace and contentment. An expanse of pure white serenity means she was the symbol of peace. As it is mentioned, breathing peace and contentment. Contentment means a feeling of happiness or satisfaction. So dear students, till here you will note down the value points of the chapter as well as you will write down the vocab in your notebook. Moreover, you will write down the characteristics of grandmother's character. Further, we shall discuss in next video. Thank you.